What do you think about car dependency in America? We got cucked, in my opinion. All efficient countries use trains. Well, I think this might be a good transition actually into one of the videos that Carlos brought for today, a train comparison of the U.S. and China. I know this has been a big debate, because like cars are an American cultural staple. It's
Mm.
something that I think comes from the mode of production. It stems from the mass production of automobiles that we had um, around the era of Henry Ford and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of like an anti-car campaign, like the idea we need to take everyone's car away right now. But what I am in favor of is more public transportation, more
Yeah.
public transportation, more public transportation, more public transportation, free public transportation, invest the surplus of society, the surplus in the workers in public transportation because it's going to help every one of the workers. It's going to save us money. It's going to improve our quality of life. It's going to help us combat climate change. So I'm all on board with the public transport and the trains.
And with time, I think a lot of people will end up making the switch towards primarily using public transportation. You know how, as someone who has to drive all the time, who I can't just be on the passenger seat hanging out, it's so annoying driving, having to pay attention to the road, to be constantly under like threat of, if I daze off a little bit, I might get into a potentially deadly car accident. When you hop on a train, you're not going to crash, and you can like bring a book, you can study, you can use that time productively.
Good
And
point.
how much time do people spend commuting to and from work, where like if they had trains, they could be doing more enjoyable things in those trains. um, Now I look at the trains in New York, and I don't know if what goes down is is a process of cultivating virtue. It's usually a bunch of crazy shit going on.
That's capitalist trains
Capitalist trains, right, right.
where they're
And
hitting
Chinese
people
trains,
for
they breathe.
jumping the turnstiles and shit.
Yeah. But yeah, I think with time, yeah, people are going to realize how more efficient it ends up being for their time. And if not, then they might continue having their cars. Cars are nice as hell, man. I grew up in the same culture as everyone else, and I think a good-looking American muscle car is it's about as beautiful a thing as you can find.
Nice
Um,
red Mustang.
right, right. Which I'll have to let go of now that I need a family car. But unfortunately, I'm dreading the day. But yeah, it's I don't think going with anti-car is a good slogan for socialists to take up. But more public transit, I think, is, and more efficient public transit. Like a lot of the public transit that we have, just like the infrastructure, is very, very shitty, and we're going to see that now in the video that will show you comparing U.S. trains to China.
For sure. I'll pull that video up right here. Um, Living in America. This is truly shocking.
This
Yeah,
guy is
yeah,
awesome. I love his channel. As a sort of, I watch a bunch of these people that just live in China and do vlogs, and it's extremely enjoyable. But he lives in a 5-tier city. So it's like it's not Beijing or Shanghai. It's like 5 levels below, and there's 8 levels for their cities. Um, and he's got other videos where he shows the city, and a 5-tier city in China is nicer, cleaner, more developed, more efficient than the nicest cities in the United States. So what that means is that some of the poorest cities in China are a hell of a lot better than the richest cities in the United States. And part of what you see in his videos is he's walking around, he's looking, he sees all these nice buildings, and these nice parks with a lot of greenery. And what you never find is something you find if you're in any major city, whether that be Chicago or New York or Miami. Homeless people. You find homeless people all over the fucking place, whether you're driving and they're asking for money, or next to buildings, or literally find them all over the place in the United States. I think there's currently 600,000 homeless people, and that's a number that's probably gone up since that statistic, which is a couple years old. You don't find that in China. So the wealth that they have amassed, it has actually gone towards creating common prosperity. It's lifted everyone up, as opposed to the wealth in the U.S. It's very visibly polarizing. You could see those contradictions at play when you go to South Beach, and you see these great buildings, but you see homeless people. You see people that are addicted to drugs, that are on the street struggling. You don't see that in China. You see not only nicer wealth, but you also don't see the polarizing element that you see in the U.S.
Yeah, I've gotten a chance to travel over the U.S. quite a bit for wrestling, which I'm really grateful for. But I was coaching a national team last year, and we went to Tulsa, and like the homelessness issue has just gotten so bad. And like right when you drive into town, there's an advertisement for a company that will give you loans to pay your bail if you go to jail. So, you can take out a loan to get out of jail, and then you got to pay that loan back probably with some insane interest rates. So you have these giant cities with all this wealth, accumulated in them, and then just the most predatory practices and that have put people on the streets everywhere you look. And, I remember thinking, I wish I could just show these kids who are with me like China. I wish I could just show them, a city without homeless people, or, a city without homeless people can exist. This doesn't have to be the norm. But obviously that's why corporate media doesn't actually talk about China's common prosperity or poverty alleviation. Then we
Deng
might
won.
see that socialism works. But
Deng was right. He said, how are you going to continue speaking about the superiority of socialism if we continue to be poor? We will concretely show people the superiority of socialism when they can do what they can do now, which is go to China and fall in love with it. And all of these people, they come from the West. All these vloggers, there's some that are American, there's some that are British. They love China. They absolutely love it. And if they've been there for a few years, they've seen it grow, which is something that we don't see in the U.S. a lot. We don't see development, especially in a lot of the places in the Midwest that we're around. That it's just crumbling. What you find, things crumbling, falling apart, buildings being abandoned by the day, and the opposite is true of China. So it is true that as Deng once predicted, we will show the superiority of socialism when people can come and see with their own eyes how it's better. And they'll be able to do that if they visit China today.
yes, the education system in the Midwest is just collapsing too, especially in the cities. So without further ado, let's check out this video.
Trains versus America's trains. What you're about to watch is truly shocking. Welcome back to another video. If you're new to the channel, then my name is...
Oh, come on. We're already experiencing technical difficulties.
That's the CIA.
aka Mr. 有意思. Now, I am not an American, and I'm also not Chinese. So once again, I'm a completely unbiased neutral party in this case. Now, I was going to do a video comparing China's high-speed rail network versus America's high-speed rail network, but unfortunately, America doesn't have one. So I'm going to be fair to America. I'm going to give them the best chance. So today we're going to be comparing metro systems, subway systems. Now we are here in Guiyang City in Guizhou province. It is one of the poorest provinces in all of China. So we're going to be comparing Guiyang City metro system to New York subway system. Now, obviously everyone knows New York, and it is ranked #1 out of all the American cities. It has the highest GDP in all of the United States. Actually, this is an unfair comparison to China. So America, I'm giving you the best chance in this one. So let's begin. Here is the entrance to the metro here. We're at Guanshanhu Park Station. Let's head in now. You can see the cleaner there, just cleaning up outside. There's where you go in there. You got the old COVID check, track and trace system there. Here's where you buy your tickets. Some kind of mural to minorities there. Here's our baby Lincoln.
It's crazy because we've had a bunch of controversies in New York City lately where police have been like beating people for trying to jump over the turnstiles and get onto the public transportation for free because that they nickel and dime you and way overcharge people on it, which is how public services work under capitalism. They're not really public. They're always intended to make money somehow, but then you look at, just the stark contrast in China, no homeless people laying around. I actually saw a video of someone in a subway, in a metro station in New York. Like, it's disgusting, but there's like someone who was mentally unstable, like grabbed the mop that someone was using and started pooping in the bucket, like in front of everybody. Just these horrible deteriorating conditions that we take as normal in the U.S. It's like, oh, yep, just another day on the New York metro system. And the police aren't going to do anything about that. They're not going to help people who are struggling in the U.S. They're just going to beat you if you try and jump over the turnstiles and get something for free. Right. And this also reminds me, this guy is basically just a vlogger. He's not clearly not like a Marxist-Leninist theorist or anything. But there was a video that I responded to on TikTok a while back about these vloggers in North Korea. And some Western corporate media outlet like MSNBC was like, these vloggers, no, it was Vox News. It was Vox. They're like, these vloggers want you to think North Korea is great, and it's literally just people going around and filming everyday life in North Korea.
These influencers want you to think life in North Korea is great.
Who, me? No, they're not actually talking about me. They're talking about North Korean social media influencers and YouTube vloggers. And how dare they show off North Korean culture as if it's good. Influencers should only be allowed to show how great things are in the West, where we've been holding North Korea under a 70-year-long embargo after killing 20% of their population and bombing every building over 2 stories tall. But it's alright, we had to do it. They're authoritarian. But I ask you, is Vice News authoritarian for suggesting that North Korea shouldn't have YouTube vloggers? And why are anti-North Korean influencers like Yeonmi Park held up by the media, even though many of her claims have been debunked or criticized by experts? Riddle me that, Vice News.
BBC said he was a shill of Xi Jinping. They said that BBC said that he was funded by the Communist Party and Xi Jinping and all that shit. So he uses it as a sort of internal joke in his videos, and he calls them BSB, so like bullshit Britain.
That's hilarious. And it's like, it is bullshit. It's crazy. We're getting to the point where the U.S., like these countries, like you said, they have achieved common prosperity. Like if Americans were to see them, they could compare them to our country and look at, so many ways in which the DPRK and China are superior. So now the propaganda media can't even have vloggers, right? They can't even have people just walking around and filming their everyday lives. They have to throw a bunch of, vitriol at it and say this is propaganda, this is evil, these are authoritarian vlogs, because they're afraid if Americans see what socialism's actually like, they'll want some socialism.
And remember, this is one of the poorest cities in China. 5-tier, which means that there's 4 tiers on top of that. He's shown some of the train stations in some of the higher tiers, and you would go to that just to hang out, not even to take the train, because there's like basically a museum with a bunch of famous painting. There's one that had like a zoo. There was pandas inside a train station. Can you imagine that? Going into a train station, you see a zoo, and then there's a art museum here, and just activities that people can go and enjoy while they're waiting 5-10 minutes to get on a train. So remember that, like, the comparison here, as he said, is not even a fair one. He's dealing with one of the poor Chinese cities, which is the one that he lives in, and comparing it to the richest city in America. But you will still see the difference.
Just buying the tickets now. 6 RMB for 1 ticket. 2 tickets, 12 RMB. Okay. Show your code, track and trace. Yeah. Scan your ticket on here. You can also, they have facial recognition if you set up your account, but obviously I haven't set up my account to use it, so you can use facial recognition. You don't even have to get your hand out of your pocket for your card. You can just walk in using your face. So we're going to be using this, so we'll just scan there, and we're inside. Just that's coming to every time you can do a massive everyone's wearing their masks, following the rules. There's no litter, there's no rubbish on the floor. It's not noisy.
That's an older. You mind pausing it? That's an older video. China just lifted their zero COVID policy, and the way that they're framing it is that they succeeded in not having what would have been if they had the same rates of death as the U.S. They succeeded in avoiding the death of around 5 million Chinese people, and now that COVID has developed into something that their scientists are saying, it's kind of just like a regular flu. They've opened up again, and there's no the policies that he has there. The zero COVID policies, they're not in place anymore. This video is a little older, but if you want, would you be able to just speed it up a little bit? Because it's a longer video, and I don't want people to get bored. I know I love seeing these, but I think the comparison might be the more important thing we want to show people.
For sure. I want to point out that the zero COVID policy, there were protests in China against the strict lockdown policy, and the U.S. tried to make it seem like, it was a literal regime change effort, and they, of course, are going to try and turn it into that. But, the government responded. That's the difference between our governments is, the Chinese government, locked the bank accounts of these truckers who were protesting and, literally took their ability to buy the means of subsistence away, took their bank accounts away. The most authoritarian practice you could ever think of, versus China, they adjusted their policy based on the demands of the people. Very authoritarian.
You see outside on one of the stations there, a woman with a little yaoer. It's going safe. Well, Chinese. Wait, have a look at it. Let's have a look at the facial recognition again. Oh, there I am in all my glory. Oh, it said I've not set up my account. Okay, let's use the card. Oh, we have to insert it now because it's the end of our journey, and we are away.
I've heard people say that facial recognition software is authoritarian when it's used in China. What do you literally open your iPhone with Face ID now? Why is it only authoritarian when it happens in China, but never when corporations do it? It's the same thing with the social credit score. China's got this social credit score, which doesn't even work how most Americans think it works. But then here we've got the credit, everyone's got a credit score where your financial decisions determine if you're able to buy a house or not. So everybody's got this number floating over their head based on how well they're doing under capitalism, which determines their quality of life, which is what we project onto China and say that their social credit system is, which it's not. But we're unable to look in the mirror and see that, it's just projection, all these things that we're saying about socialist countries. And especially when it comes to their, quote unquote, authoritarianism, it's almost always something that's happening in the US, but to a worse degree.
Right. And the social credit score program has a 95% favorability with the Chinese people. They appreciate it. They see it as a way to promote virtue. And, I told you that I just read today the Constitution, the adjustment of the Constitution of the CPC in light of the 20th National Congress. And one of the things that they emphasize is precisely that.
Oh, that is right. That was a metro system in China, in Guiyang City, in one of China's poorest provinces. Now, the footage that you're about to see is from America's richest city. What you're about to watch is truly shocking. Brace yourselves.
Oh my god. That's the entrance. How can that be the entrance here? That looks like the entrance to hell. Oh my god. I know what you're thinking. This looks like a movie set. This is not a movie set. This is real. This is really the entrance to New York subway. Oh my god, look at the state of it. That is insane. It looks like something out of a horror movie.
And you might say, how can you blame trash on the ground on capitalism? Maybe that's just from overcrowding or whatever. But like I said, there are police in the subway stations in New York who will, beat you with a nightstick if you try and jump the turnstile. But they won't do anything about the people having mental health crises, all around you or on the floor. Because that labor costs money. And under capitalism, nobody wants to invest money in things that are for the public good, if they're not going to bring about surplus value and profit. So, they don't even want to hire a janitor. They don't want to pay someone to keep these things clean. That would cost, or that would be investing the societal surplus in something that benefits the people, that benefits the public. And that's not the goal of capitalism. It's not a society for itself. It's a society for capital. So, I mean, the resistance to spending money on labor that would serve the public good is the reason why you have, the subways that are trashed.
Madness. Oh my god. Imagine walking down. If you walk down that tunnel, that's the last walk you're ever going to make. Most of these people will never seen again. This is the tunnel to hell. You ain't coming out of this tunnel. Oh my god. What the? Oh god. Imagine the smell of it. How can it look that bad? This is America. This is the land of the free. Oh, that guy's got the right idea with the suitcase. He's like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. That guy's heading straight to the airport. He's probably going to China, actually. Oh my god, what a state. I've never seen anything like it. It's crazy. What's with all this so much graffiti, trash, rubbish? You can imagine with all that trash, there's going to be rats. Oh, the smell. I can smell it through the video. I can smell it. Probably smells like a toilet. That looks like a Burger King cup. Oh man, this is just insane. What is wrong with America's infrastructure? My goodness. Oh god, what is that coming out of the walls? Some toxic goo. Ugh. Yeah. This is crazy. God. I don't know how it can get that bad. Okay, now we're heading inside. Oh, look at the state of it. Look at the state of that. That is incredible. Oh, look at the ceiling. I mean, is that safe even? The ceiling might collapse any second.
I mean, he's stunned by it, but for Americans, this probably seems pretty normal, right? This probably isn't even that shocking. Like, the biggest city near me is Chicago, and I mean, if you go into the public areas, the public transportation doesn't look much different than this. The infrastructure just hasn't been kept up with. And I mean, like, think about all the different effects of that has. There's environmental effects, there's health effects of breathing in smog and pollution, and then just like the psychological effects of walking around surrounded by trash and garbage all the time and crumbling infrastructure, while you have these giant skyscrapers, owned by banks or, mega corporations. So there's this giant accumulation of wealth, but also this giant accumulation of filth because, the society isn't taking care of itself. And, what effect does that have on the individuals in society?
Right. And it's a society of abundance in certain areas. So there's no excuse. Like with Cuba has crumbling infrastructure, but Cuba has a blockade imposed on it by the most formidable of enemies, and the things that are not fixed, it's because they literally just do not have access to the materials necessary to fix them. So conservatives and liberals or whoever love talking about, yeah, but look at Cuba's buildings. They don't have access to fixing those things. The little bit that they're able to make, they use towards the things that are most directly connected to the public good, to healthcare, to education, and similar things, to feeding their people. But there's no excuse for the U.S. The U.S. is not under sanctions from, a global imperialist power, because it is the global imperialist power. It's where the super profits of the whole world are ciphered into. And, it's the richest country on the planet. And this is the experience and the atmosphere that the vast majority of its citizens have to face. And just from the level of security, I mean, we don't talk about crime often. We know crime in our context is, something that develops out of the social relations which shape materially people's needs and lives, but also the cultures that emerge out of that. But just having the tranquility to go into a train station and not feel like you're going to get assaulted, or for women, not feel like you're going to get, harassed. That's huge. In the US, how many times don't we see, women getting harassed in trains filled with people, and no one does jack. No one does anything. It's just disgusting. And that level of serenity to be able to go to a train and not just not be scared by being attacked, harassed, or whatever, but be able to even enjoy the experience, because he showed a poor place in China, one of the poorest cities. If you look at some of the richer cities in China, the tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 cities, I mean, you would go to the train just to hang out, not even to take the train. It's just insanely more beautiful than museums in the US. So it's, these comparisons, they need to be brought to light, because we still have, I believe, the American public has been led to believe that China is still this super poor country, that it's backwards, and that we're still, the richest country on the planet. And to some extent, in terms of GDP, sure, that's true. But look at the actual country, and then look at China. You'll see the difference. Anyone would. And these people that go there, they're not Marxists. They don't give a rat's ass about socialism or capitalism. They just want to live where they can live best. And they realize that is China. So when people tell us, if you love socialism so much, why don't you go to China? I mean, I would probably live more comfortably in China. But I won't, because my fight is here. I won't go back to Cuba because they already had their revolution. I won't go to China because that would be too easy. It's be living in a comfortable society where I'm guaranteed that my standard of living will continuously go up, where I'm guaranteed basic things that I need to survive, where I can live in a beautiful city that's affordable and that doesn't constantly force me to clash against the polarized character of society, where there's nice buildings and homeless people and potential crime and stuff like that. So yeah, it'd be great to live in China, but our struggle is here. But it's important to show these things, because everything China has, we can have as well if we had a socialist society. If we had workers controlling the forces of production and directing them towards social good and not towards the profits of a small group of people.
Absolutely. It reminds me actually of the presentation that I used to do like way back in the day when, you and me were still very early in our journey about urban planning, basically, and the planning of neighborhoods, and, comparing what we call the projects in the US, which are just these gray apartments stacked on top of each other, public housing, that's designed to get the highest quantity of people you can into the smallest space. And that has all these negative psychological effects, and we know what methods of urban planning are the best. We know what maximizes human happiness. It's having a lot of third places where public places where people can meet outside of their homes, having everywhere connected by sidewalks, walking or biking, rather than just a bunch of cars, and then like having, rather than having everything be gray and concrete, you have plants, and you have what they call the biosphere. And, it's been proven time and time again that humans need to be around nature, need to be around plants, because it increases our levels of happiness. Right. So we're just totally ignoring all these things we know about urban planning in the US to continue doing everything in the most cost effective way for the capitalist class. And it has all these horrific negative effects on humanity, on our psychology, on how we interact with each other. And, now we have a real life example of a country moving away from that, a country in China who is doing socialist urban planning. And the first time I read Capital, I ended up buying a copy for my brother who's studying engineering. And, city design and city planning is like civil engineering. But like I was just thinking like he has to read this because he's thinking about, how to plan cities. And how they can be better designed. It's like anybody who's involved in that needs to grasp Marxism and grasp how capitalism prevents us from having urban planning that makes sense.
It's one of the emphasis that China is putting in its development, which is to make it green, which in cities, the way that that's experienced is by having a bunch of greenery. By having balconies that allow people to have plants, and by having a lot of parks. And when I was living down with my parents, they had just for the summer they had just opened up a small park in Miami with art and murals, and it was a lot of greenery, a lot of different types of plants. And I was going over there to walk every day, and it was such a leveling experience. You spend your whole day working, and then you're able to take a walk and see these nice greeneries and see some art. And something like that, it's very rare for that to have happened in Miami, but something like that's just the norm in China. There's a few of those in every city, and it's just a beautiful place to just walk around. I sent you a comparison he recently did with China and India, and I think it would be good to watch because they both obtained independence around the same time, and they were both in very similar economic conditions. And he compares their trains. He also has some digs at the U.S. He always takes jabs at the U.S. But he shows a train station there that it's much more developed than the one in his town. I think he moved places actually, but I mean the comparison is there to make. You're looking at a train station in one of China's poorest cities being incredibly superior to the train station in the richest place in the U.S. And I made a pretty audacious tweet a few months ago, which was that some of China's poorest cities are a hell of a lot better than the richest cities in America. And I think if anyone actually engages with these videos or goes themselves, they would come to a similar conclusion.
Absolutely, I agree. One of the we could probably move on from that specific video and go to the India one or go to one about the Chinese apartments. But one of the starkest contrasts between the U.S. and China, and this relates to the the having more greenery and biosphere in the urban planning, is the People's Liberation Army in China has been planting giant forests, actually, that covers as much square footage as the country of Ireland. So while our military has been waging these imperialist, murderous wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, all around the world, Libya, Syria, China's military has been planting forests. They've been combating deforestation, combating climate change, and like I said, allowing for more biosphere and greenery in their urban areas, which is good for human development and human happiness. It's truly, a society that's working for itself, a society for itself rather than a society for capital. Our military works for the sake of capital. China's military works for the sake of their people, and for the sake of their further development.
There was a comment above that was like, when the video started freezing, someone said, capitalist internet, and if we look at the apartment one of the things that we'll see is that that's a true statement, because the speed at which the internet goes in China is like almost twice as fast as in the US. I'm not a big tech guy, but in terms of numbers, I remember I watched this video with my sister, and she's like, "Oh my God, I have like one of the fastest this, and that's like twice as much as mine." So yeah, I'm good with watching the apartment one next.
Sounds good. Yeah, capitalist internet is terrible, and they freaking nickel and dime you every way they can.
And welcome back to another video. If you're new to the channel, then my name is Jason, aka Humbo. Okay, so welcome to my new apartment. Well, it's not actually my apartment, we're just renting it. So we're going to give you a tour around. We are currently, where are we, Lincoln? Where are we? Lincoln, where are we? We're on the balcony. So let's take a look at the balcony first. Okay, Lincoln's in the car. Right, so this is the balcony. This was a newly furnished apartment that we're renting for 25,000 RMB for the year. Let's just have a look. Got a nice view of a river down there. Let's take a look inside. It is a 3-bedroom. Yeah. It is a 3-bedroom apartment. Sorry, let's have a clean up. There, Lincoln. Just squeeze past the pots here. 3-bedroom apartment. This is a master bedroom with an ensuite Western toilet there. Bedroom is a little bit tight when you're trying to squeeze past if you've got a cot there, but I would say it's pretty nice. Not bad. Lincoln likes it. We've got a mosquito net on there that also acts as a bed guard for when Lincoln's in there. Then we have 2 more bedrooms here. This place is about 120 square meters. I deeply apologize about the mess. Why is everywhere like open? I would like to say that we've only just moved in here, but we've been here about a month. Oh no, another room missing. Look at the state. Why the cupboards? Jao opened all the doors and cupboards to get rid of the new decorations now. So we don't actually use these rooms, as you can see. It's just kind of used as a wardrobe, really. Then if we come down here, you have another toilet. You've got a sink, mirror. The mirror has a little light on and heated. It's pretty nice. So as I said, this whole place was already newly decorated by the landlord. Let's just step in here. There seems to be a dog in my toilet. See, we have the squat toilet. And also you have another shower here. That you want to use. It's a bit of a weird design. You walk through the toilet into a laundry kind of area, and there's another dog here. Some kind of grumpy, some kind of very stinky.
This is so cool. I only ever get to see places like this with some of those features like the buttons on the mirrors when we travel for wrestling and happen to stay in a nicer hotel. Really, that's the only place I've seen something like this, when we happen to stay in a bigger city. And we can only, get into a nicer hotel because it's closer to the venue or whatever. Like, American apartments do not look like this, especially not in the freaking Midwest. I mean, maybe if you're talking like upper end apartments in New York or on the coast, but I don't know a single place in the Midwest that looks anything like this.
My wife and I were sick for like 2 years straight because of how bad the apartment that we had in Dubuque was. We were getting constant mold, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment that we were paying $600 for, and that's extremely cheap. Now the one that I live in, it's 2 bedrooms, and because it's in a different city, it's like $1,300 a month. Which, when you compare it to this, it's insane. But it got so bad that like I would take off my shirt from baseball and put it to dry, and it would get mold while I was taking a shower, and I would come back, it would have mold. And so the only way, after months and even a year of telling the landlord about this, the only way he ended up doing something was when I threatened to sue him. I had talked to one of the teachers that I had that was also a lawyer, and they told me that I could sue for that. So I threatened to sue him, and then he came and took out the rug and fixed some stuff, and he ended up jacking up the rent like $100 after doing that. But it's insane that those sorts of apartments, all those big buildings that you see, a lot of them are apartments like that, and it's just where working people live. So I mean, just the idea of being able to have a decent job, to go to a nice home like that, to relax, and to have a society that when you go out, you have all these activities that you can do in your free time. Some connected to just pleasure and enjoyment, others connected to human flourishing and different things that you could do to develop yourself in an affordable fashion. It's just, it's the fruits and the niceties of what they call the first stage of socialism.
For sure. I could tell landlord stories forever. I had this landlord in college who's notorious in the town we lived in. He owns like over 60 homes, and then he owns 2 other businesses as well. I looked up all his financials once, but our washing machine broke and he fixed it, and then, it broke again. And he said, if it breaks a third time, you guys have to pay for it. Like, there's no way that's legal. It says on the lease, that you have to pay for the washing machine. You have to provide a working washing machine. We didn't do anything to make it break. And he did other things like try and keep us stuck on our lease, or, one of our roommates bailed on us, and we were trying to find a subleaser, but the landlord didn't want us to do that. So he was just trying to increase the rent payment like $150 a month for the people who were still left at the house. There's just a couple stories, but and for advice, like try and find a tenants union or like threaten to sue them, like Carlos said. Because when I said, no, it says in the lease this, and this, he did back down. He knew he was just trying to swindle us, but they'll just try and swindle you. They'll hope you're an agreeable person who's not going to call them on this, or you're just trying to be a nice guy. And, like a lot of working people, like, honestly, my parents are kind of like this. They're a little bit naive about, folks like landlords, and they just want to be nice sometimes. And then, that'll allow these people to super exploit you, versus this guy is living in this apartment for $300, which I see people are freaking stunned about in the chat. Same here. That place that I lived at where the landlord was going to make me pay for my own washer and dryer was, I don't know, $350 a month for 4 people to live in one house, $350 each, which is pretty cheap compared to a lot of places. But yeah, it's wild.
Abolish NATO says there was a gas leak in my basement, and the landlord said the batteries in the CO detector just needed to be replaced. Almost died.
Oh my gosh.
French bulldog, washing machine there, window looking out onto the river down there. And then through there you can see the kitchen, so let's just head back through now. That's my dog Mona Lisa. And this is Winston, who is a Kugil. And he's going mental at the moment because he can sense that there's a storm coming. Just calm down, it's not going to do anything. Just calm down. We can't give him like a comfy bed or mat or anything because it just destroys it. So you tear it to 1,000 pieces. Anyway, so that's their place. And that's just temporary anyway, because I have an announcement at the end of this video, so stick around. So then you come into the living room area. What's on the TV? Oh, Lincoln's got his cartoons on. Nice big couch. Then you've got Lincoln's bouncy thing, and then his play area. Just look at the state of it, all the toys. Nice big window. This was an open balcony, but a lot of people in China, they decide to close off the balcony, I guess because they've already got that balcony across there. So they only wanted one, I probably would have kept it open, but you get a bit of extra room if you close it off. And just spotted someone over there decided to...
I know this is people's houses and people's, their personal sort of living spaces. But again, look at all the greenery like we were talking about. This is not really something that exists in the American cities. Maybe, you'll have flowers on the balcony or whatever, but there's all this greenery. It's all just looks really well designed and well put together, efficiently planned. Yeah, it's wild. Is there a comparison to American apartments in this or not?
No.
We could probably just call it here.
Yeah.
I think people get the gist, but those are great names.
Atomic Punk is right though. We have freedom, so
right.
Yeah.
I failed to consider that.
Yeah.